Real Talk Radio. You're listening to the National Intel Report with your host, John Stadtmiller.
On tomorrow's program, I am going to have a substitute host. You have probably never heard this man before. His name is Clyde Cleveland. Clyde did a very interesting thing last year. He did the Common Sense. And if that sounds familiar, folks, that's what Thomas Paine did, and didn't put his name on it, by the way. He felt that his name was not important. What the issue was, what was being discussed in this letter. And Common Sense came about. It was actually a pamphlet that was printed. And there was no internet then. There was no telephones. There was newspaper. There was no radio, no television. So they had to do everything by printed material. Well, this is how Common Sense became so fantastic, to all the people that wanted to cast off the chains of King George and start their own country. This small pamphlet that struck this chord with the colonials would be an understatement. The first edition of 50,000 copies sold out in a day. The second printing also sold out in a day. An estimated 500,000 copies would be printed over the next few months and read by the vast majority of then. This is what we had in this country, folks, only 3 million people, 13 colonies. It was read by the vast majority of the 3 million people then residing in the 13 colonies. So Clyde is going to be subbing for me tomorrow, and his program is going to be on Saturday. He will be coming on board. This is also a gentleman that I met at Jekyll Island. And, folks, as Tommy Jefferson put it, he said, the spirit of the times may alter, will alter. The rulers will become corrupt, our people careless. From the conclusion of this war, we shall be going downhill. It will not be then be necessary to resort every moment to the people for support. They will be forgotten, therefore, and their rights disregarded. They will forget themselves, but in the sole faculty of making money, and will never think of uniting to effect a due respect for their rights. The shackles, therefore, will be made heavier and heavier till our rights shall revive or expire in a convulsion. And Mr. Cleveland put on the back side of this magazine that he produced last year the top 10 characteristics of a bottom-up versus a top-down society. And here's the differences. Instead of love, you got fear. And that's what they're pumping at us 24/7. Instead of freedom, you have control. Instead of non-coercion, you have force. Instead of the local control, you got your centralized planning. Instead of the abundant creativity, which was the beacon to this entire world, what you have is stifled creativity. Instead of optimism, you got bagfuls of despair out there, don't you? Instead of strong families, you had people working overtime, breaking the family unit down, which is the backbone of this country. And instead of personal responsibility, people, you've seen it all your lives, you now are dependent, aren't you? And instead of universal opportunity, you have that concentrated power. And instead of prosperity, you got poverty. It's time that this changes. So I would invite you to listen tomorrow to Mr. Clyde Cleveland. He will be substitute for me tomorrow. I'm going to be off on it's graduation day. My stepson is graduating tomorrow. Phil in Pennsylvania. Hello, Phil.
Well, hello, John. How are you?
Hi.
Listen, you did an excellent show about a week or two ago about the disproportionate influence over power that the Zionists have. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you could make that podcast available for free on your website. I think it's a vitally important show that everybody really should, that possible, should be able to listen to that.
Phil, hold on a second. Let me put the request out right now. Phil, Mr. Otero, Steve Otero, calling Steve Otero. Did you hear what the man just said? Phil, go ahead and repeat it.
The show that you did on Zionism about a week or two ago, you named names. It sounded like you did a lot of really good research, and I just feel that it should really go out there like in a viral manner, so as to inform the populace.
Well, and, the question came up, why are we charging for the podcast? We shouldn't be. And I am going to endeavor to push to make those podcasts free.
Yeah, my suggestion is just for that one particular one,
Okay.
Only because of its content is I deem it to be extremely important. I just really feel that we're involved in foreign entanglements, and therein lies our problems.
Yeah, we're in a ton of those, and we're backing the wrong horses out there.
Right. And I just wanted to commend you on it. It was a great show, and I was listening while I was at work, so I didn't catch it all. And I, talking to back channels with other folks online, they said that they had heard it as well, and they wish that they had recorded it, and they had not. And
Phil, I think that was a program that I did that I could not understand. I think what prompted that was Jason Bermas.
Yes,
absolutely. And his comments about, that he didn't believe that 90% of television, radio, magazines, newspapers were owned by the Jews. And that just launched me off the deep end. I thought, you know what? I hope he's going to listen to this program because I'm going to set the kid straight. And that was my intent. I think Jason Bermas is a good kid, but I think he is woefully deficient. I mean, he's great on 9/11 issue, but when it comes down to the power structure and who's pulling the switch behind the curtain there in the Land of Oz, I think he was sadly lacking. So, yeah, we'll put that up.
Well, I think they know where not to tread. I think they have a lot of fear in doing so, and rightly so. I mean,
but why? Here's the question that I have, because many of the good Jews are finding out how they've been baffled by the Zionists, and they are not liking it. The more they're finding out, the more they're rejecting Zionism, which is nothing but a secular political movement that is bad at the core, rotten. And it always struck me as to why people would want to shy away from that. Because if you are going to restore, if you're going to put this country back in its proper framework under the Constitution and law, you cannot, by any conscionable measure, ignore those that are trying to change this country. Right. It just baffles me that people appreciate the truth. I have never received one angry email from a Jewish guy going, "You're anti-Semitic." They're hearing the message. This is why Abraham Foxman from the ADL will not mention me on his site, because he knows I know the difference. And what he doesn't want is people going over just out of curiosity to hear what this anti-Semitic guy is going to say, because I'm going to set him straight. I am probably the best friend of the Jews out there.
Right. I think that the biggest piece of propaganda that the Zionists spell out there is that criticism of Israel or the state of Israel, they when it's convenient for them, they want it to be equivalent to anti-Semitism, and it is not.
Absolutely.
And there's a complete distinction between there, and I mean, I've even heard Alan Dershowitz himself say that, he welcomes the criticism of Israel. So,
and Alan's no friend of this country or the Constitution.
I agree with that.
That's for sure. All right. Anything else, Phil?
No, sir, and that's all. I just suggesting that that was a very well done. It was obvious that you did your research on it, and maybe even a follow-up show.